All right, we are here with Dr. Smith, Dr. David Smith, and he is assistant professor of English at the University of Science and Arts of Oklahoma. Um, and he is a primary interest on research and teaching is British Romanticism. Dr. Smith, what made you choose that time period?
Well, thanks for having me, Professor Rose. Pleasure to be here, as always. First, I kind of am a romantic, I would say. That is, I find intrinsic value in art and beauty. I really like nature. I really like being outside and the natural beauty of things. I enjoy things that are very dramatic and atmospheric. The romantics are all about that. I feel like art should stir the heart as well as the mind, and romanticism really focuses on that. And lastly, the Gothic is a really big part. You mentioned my scholarly background in Romanticism. I would actually say I've shifted more into the Gothic, but Romanticism lends itself nicely to the Gothic. So I write about the Gothic. I read a lot of Gothic. I'm teaching a class this fall on the Gothic. So those are some things that really brought me to Romanticism.
All right, good to hear. British Romanticism has kind of a wide array of authors under its banner, so to speak. We have William Blake, Wollstonecraft, Wordsworth, Coleridge, Byron, Shelley, Keats. So lots of authors in there. What binds these folks together? What are some literary elements, some themes that put them under this banner, British Romanticism?
Yeah, and Romanticism was sort of a post after the fact label. They weren't calling themselves romanticists at the time, something that people looking back applied to them.
Right,
Uh,
and it is one of the rare time periods of history that is named for a literary movement, one
mhm.
of the unique moments in history.
And I will say Romanticism is not love. It's not The Notebook or something like that, or Romeo and Juliet. That's not what we mean by Romanticism. What we mean by Romanticism is, in one sense, a deep appreciation for the past and this sort of almost mythical King Arthur type of English tradition, right? So you think of Romanticism, that's one of the things you can think of. I've already alluded to a couple of tenets of Romanticism, a focus on beauty and the sublime. I can talk more about that if you're interested. Being overwhelmed by the power and beauty of nature. That's a deep connective tissue that most of those authors that you listed have. The romantics are very concerned with individuality. So when you think of Coleridge's Lime Tree Bower in My Prison, we're exploring his individual emotions and experiences, right? So that's something that a lot of them, Wordsworth, Blake, Shelley, Keats, all these poets are going to be exploring that as well. Another common theme was a desire to see the world improve and transform. So, building off of the French Revolution, which took place in 1789, writers like Mary Wollstonecraft and Blake, they leveled criticism at the English society in which they lived. Wollstonecraft is considered one of the founders of feminism. Byron and Shelley were also quite radical. Lord Byron, actually died in Greece while trying to assist their independence movement. Greece was part of the Ottoman Empire, and they were seeking and there were some fights there for independence. And of course, most of them had a deep appreciation for the power of art, poetry, music, literature, and so forth. They all believed that the way to inspire change was through the emotions, and art is particularly suited to affect the emotions. They can prompt readers and listeners to consider and embrace new ways of thinking and living. So those are some of the things that you would be able to find if you look at the collection of writings from most of those authors.
And one common image is the alien harp that is played by wind, right? And for
Mhm.
any fans of Doctor Who, one of the most recent episodes, The Devil's Chord, is about a creation of a worldwide alien harp.
Yeah, and it's a really cool idea here, right? Because you have this harp that you put in a window. And the whole idea is that the wind moves through the strings on the harp and produces music. And so nature is actually producing music and producing art. And in the same way, the poet and Coleridge is one who kind of formalized this in his poem, The Aeolian Harp. He imagines that he himself is this passive receptacle for the inspiration of nature to come down and move through him and produce art, in this case, poetry, through him, right? So there's this deep connection between art and poetry and nature, which is a really, really crucial part of why the Romantics are not only interested in and appreciate nature, but also think it's so important to preserve. Wordsworth is in fact one of the he was called the poet of nature in ways, and he is one of the earliest shall we say art artistic expressions of what we would now call environmentalism. He's kind of advocating for environmental conservation and preservation, even as the Industrial Revolution is starting to mechanize and urbanize the British landscape. And a lot of his poems are lamenting that, or looking backward to this bucolic, idyllic England that may never have actually existed, but it exists in his imagination. And he's trying to make people more appreciative of that so that they will rise against this increasing creep for technology and urbanization and development.
Yeah, one other name for Wordsworth and his little circle is the Lake Poets. Um, so kind of moving forward here. So we are in 2024. So why should we still read and study and appreciate the Romantics?
Well, hopefully the previous answer gives some indication, right? Today's world is highly critical of previous generations in many ways. The current state of affairs in political, economic, social, and environmental, technological ways. There's a lot of tumult and chaos that we deal with, and it doesn't look like it's getting better. It may only ever be getting worse. So this concern for drawing attention to, noticing, and hopefully inciting people to rise up and try to change their world and to resist these cultural currents that are going in the wrong direction. That's definitely a strong point of connection between Romantics and our day and age today. However, I would also add that their appreciation of art and beauty is something that we are, and this is me getting on my soapbox here for a moment, we're increasingly dismissive of. Our society seems to be more concerned about making money and influencing people, of bringing fame and prosperity to ourselves, making our lives easier and more convenient, right? But art is a struggle, and the Romantics embraced art as a way to challenge both themselves as artists to improve and experiment and develop new things, and as a way to inspire others. They appreciated beauty as an intrinsic good of life, something that makes life worth living. I always tell my students that money can't buy you happiness, but appreciating a poignant poem, beautiful sunset, a breathtaking mountain waterfall can bring you awe and wonder, sort of taking you out of yourself. And so that's one of the things I like to say to my students is, what is the point of living? Is it to accumulate money and wealth and convenience and ease and pleasure and all these things? Or are those means to some other greater, higher end? And for the Romantics, some of them were Christians or ascribed to some sort of spiritual beliefs. Some of them were atheists and they didn't really adhere to that. But regardless of their own religious inclinations, they still thought that there was something that should take people out of themselves and out of their own selfish, sort of narrow focus to either the greater world as it is here, but maybe even also some more transcendent level of existence and experience. And these are the things that can connect us, right? And this is the power and beauty of art. This is the power and importance of the poem or the poet or the artist in society. We still have a great respect for art and artists nowadays. It's just evolved into things more like movies and television, right? But what a great piece of art does, it sort of unites people, it brings people out of themselves and connects them, and shows that there are wider issues, there are wider things that we can agree on, and we can move forward and advocate for. And so I think the Romantics are maybe the first real movement that tried to do that intentionally and consciously to a certain extent. And that's certainly why they've had the enormous influence that they've had from basically the rest of the 19th and 20th century into our own time.
All right, thank you. So for my students, I do recommend that while we are reading these and thinking about them, that you go to the library and go to the little quiet area that has the big giant windows that look out upon campus. And if you can do that as the sun is setting, it is very beautiful. MCC is uniquely located because we are around Cameron Park. We're on a hill and we have lots of beautiful landscapes around here. Buildings, not so much, but landscapes, very beautiful. And I would try to kind of use the benefits here of that campus to enhance the poetry. So,
Like take the Coleridge poem or take another romantic poem about nature and go to Cameron Park, go to Lover's Leap, or go walk one of the trails and just find a place to sit down and read the poem, read it aloud, right? Poetry is meant to be read aloud. Read it multiple times and savor it and think about the words and think about the connections, and then do so in this natural environment and say, okay, can I get into the mindset that these romantic poets were trying to lead me into?
yeah, all right. Well, thank you, Dr. Smith. Thank you for your time. And yep, thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, Professor Rose.